Hey everybody, I hope that you are well and also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 8 English lesson on simple, compound, complex and compound complex sentences. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, all right. So today we'll be doing we are basically at our chapter or doing the chapter grade 8, which is simple compound complex and compound complex sentence. So it is simple compound complex and compound complex sentences. Right, we're doing that is our chapter. Our subject is English Language Arts, grade 8, and the lessons that we are going to be focusing on is the sentence simple, compound, complex, or compound complex? So, is the sentence simple, compound, complex, or compound complex? And the other lesson that we're going to be doing is identify dependent and independent clauses. Right? And that is set 1. All right. So when we go to is the sentence simple, compound, complex, or compound complex, right? Then it's to do with the different types of sentences. So our sentence can either be a simple sentence, it can be a compound sentence, it can be a complex sentence, or it can be a compound complex sentence. All right. So when it comes to our different types of sentences, right? Remember, when it comes to our simple sentences, it is to do with different clauses, whether we have an independent clause or if we have dependent clauses also, right? And a clause is a group of words that contains both a subject and a predicate, meaning that it has both a subject, a person or thing that is doing the action, as well as the verb within that sentence. All right. So once again, we said a clause is a group of words that contains both a subject and a predicate. It's like saying it's a noun or something as well as like a verb. So when it comes to clauses, right, we have independent clauses and we have dependent clauses, right? An independent clause is a complete thought, right, that can stand alone as a sentence. That is a dependent clause. That's an independent clause. You can stand on your own 2 feet. You can stand on your own. It has both subject and predicate, right? And then we have a dependent clause, which is not a complete thought and it cannot stand alone as a student. All right. So we said that with our dependent clauses and independent clauses is a complete thought and it stands on its own. Think also of, for example, if let's say you are an independent person, right? If you're an independent person, it means that you can stand on your own, right? You've got your own, you do your own thing, right? Even if you live under, like with your parents, but you are an independent person, right? You don't bother people for money and for things like that. Then also think of a dependent person. Like as much as you're independent, by yourself, but you still depend on your parents to get your things like food and clothing and so on, right? All right. So that is the examples about the dependent and independent clause. So dependent clause is like where you, it's like a sentence. It's within a sentence. It is where um it is not a complete thought and cannot stand on its own, right? A dependent clause needs an independent clause in order to show, in order to complete a sentence. All right. So when it comes to simple sentences, right, some of our simple sentences is made up of a single independent clause, and then some is made up of, more than one independent clause. And if it's made up of more than one independent clause, then we can say we call that a compound sentence. So now we're going to a compound sentence. All right. So here we said some simple sentences. They also introduce introductory phrases. But now let's go to a compound sentence. A compound sentence, it is made up of two independent clauses, right? And when we say it's made up of two independent clauses, then it is basically two independent clauses that can stand on its own, right? So a compound sentence is made up of two independent clauses, and it is joined by a coordinating conjunction such as and, but, or so. That is a compound sentence. So which means that if we were to join our two independent clauses, all right. So we said a compound sentence. And if we look at this compound sentence over here at the example, then it says, we saw the flash of lightning. And second later, we heard a rumble of thunder, which means that this is a compound sentence because if we were to separate these two sentences, then it would be we saw a flash of lightning, and then the second would be later we heard a rumble of thunder. That would have been our two sentences, or let's say our independent sentences or clauses that can stand on its own. So it's two simple sentences, right? That is a compound sentence, two independent clauses that is joined together by a conjunction. Then we have a complex sentence, right? In a complex sentence, it is made up of an independent clause and a dependent clause. And remember, we said a dependent clause, it cannot stand on its own. A dependent clause within a complex sentence, it usually begins with a subordinating conjunction or but with a relative pronoun. And subordinating conjunctions, they include words like after, although, as, because, before, if, since, unless, until, when, and while. Those are subordinating conjunctions, right? And then we also have our relative pronouns, which are words like which, who, whom, or whose. All right. And remember, when it comes to a complex sentence, right? We said, remember, even with the complex sentence, it is basically like a, let's say, one independent clause that is, let's say, that's in this complex sentence. And then we have our dependent clause also within the sentence, but it usually starts with a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun. And the relative pronoun include words like that, which, who, whom, or whose. All right, so we said a complex sentence, it's made up of an independent clause as well as a dependent clause. And a dependent clause within a complex sentence, it begins with a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun. And we went over what the subordinating conjunctions are. And the relative pronouns are which, who, whom, or who. If she ever gets the chance, Terry would love to visit the Egyptian pyramids. And that is a complex sentence. So, also when it comes to a compound complex sentence, so remember we said we have a compound sentence, and a compound sentence is made up of two independent clauses that is joined together by a coordinating conjunction, right? That is a compound sentence. Then we went over a complex sentence which has an independent clause as well as a dependent clause, right? And the dependent clause starts with a subordinating conjunction, right? That is a compound as well as a complex. Now, that giving us information of a compound complex sentence, and that it is made up of two or more independent clauses and one or more dependent clauses. And if we look at an example, right, it says, after Samantha left work. So after Samantha left work, she stopped at the bank and then she went to the gym. So a compound complex sentence is made up of two or more independent clauses and one or more dependent clause. Wow. And if we look at a example, it says after Samantha left for work, she stopped at the bank and then she went to the gym. All right. So when it comes to a compound complex sentence, it sounds very much compound complex, complicated sound, right? So when it comes to a the compound complex sentence, right? Then we just need to remember that it is made up of more than one independent clause and more than one dependent clause depending. All right. So now before we go on to our test, right? We said we have a simple sentence, we have a compound sentence, we have a complex sentence, and then we have a compound complex sentence, right? We said a simple sentence is made up of. So we said that when it comes to our simple compound complex sentence, at the end of the day it's all about going back to our simple sentences, because when we have, or when we even write essays, we write stories, texts, and so on, it basically all just starts with a simple sentence, right? And remember, a simple sentence, it's made up of a single independent clause, and that independent clause, right, has both subject and it has a predicate. All right. So now we're going to our test. So we're going to our test where we are going to say, is the sentence simple? Is it compound? Is it complex? Or is it a compound complex sentence? It says, which of the sentences is true? So if we can't find any expensive hotel for the 4th of July weekend, we can always stay with my parents. So we say that if we can find an inexpensive hotel for the 4th of July weekend, we can always stay with my parents. So we need to say that a simple sentence, compound sentence, complex sentence, or a compound complex sentence. All right. All right. And if we look at the type of sentence, then it is a complex sentence, right? Because it has both a simple sentence or simple independent clause as well as a dependent clause. Annual plants survive only one season and must be replaced each year. But perennials return each year with new flowers and foliage. All right. Annual plants survive only one season and must be replaced each year, but perennials return each year with new flowers and foliage. We can say this is a compound sentence that is joined by a coordinating conjunction. All right, the next one says the right hemisphere of the human brain typically controls muscle movement on the left side of the body. So the right hemisphere of the human brain typically controls muscle movement on the left side of the body. All right, so we see the right hemisphere of the human brain typically controls muscle movement on the right side of the body. And that is a simple sentence. All right. Since 1923, the United States Flag Code has provided advisory rules for displaying and handling the US flag. So, since 1923, the United States Flag Code has provided advisory rules for displaying and handling the US flag. We need to say which type of sentence this is. Is it a simple, compound, complex, or compound complex sentence? All right, so we say since 1923. Ah, I think that's a simple sentence with an introductory phrase. So sometimes when it has like since 19, then it means that it has an introductory phrase. It doesn't mean that it is something that is on its own. So that was my mistake. But it has an introductory phrase. All right, the platypus has venom producing glands, which are rare among mammals, but its venom is not generally lethal to humans. This looks as if it's the compound complex sentence or a compound sentence. So, with the platypus has venom producing glands, which are rare amongst mammals, but its venom is not generally lethal to humans. All right, let's try compound complex, but I think it's either between a compound complex sentence or it is a compound sentence because it's a compound complex sentence because it also has a coordinating conjunction, right? And it's divided in some form of way. It's like an extended sentence. Which type of sentence is this? It says Vondra is a competitive horseback rider and she will be competing in the next world equestrian games, which are held every 4 years. So we need to say if this is a simple sentence, if it's a compound sentence, a complex sentence, or if it's a compound complex sentence, which is Vondra is a competitive horseback rider and will be competing in the world's equestrian games, which are held every 4 years. Is this a simple sentence, a compound complex, or compound complex sentence? All right, let's choose our compound complex sentence or compound sentence. Yes, it's a compound complex sentence. As cold weather approaches, you must protect your water pipes against freezing, or they can rupture and cause significant damage to your home. So, as cold weather approaches, you must protect your water pipes against freezing, or they can rupture and cause significant damage to your home. We need to choose which type of sentence it is. Is it a simple sentence, a compound sentence, a complex sentence, or is it a compound complex sentence? All right, and if we were to choose the correct type of sentence, then we choose a compound complex sentence. All right, the vibrant trumpet shaped blooms of the trumpet vine make it ideal for attracting hummingbirds. the vibrant trumpet shaped blooms of the trumpet vine make it ideal for attracting hummingbirds. We need to say if this is a simple sentence, a compound sentence, complex sentence, or a compound complex sentence. And we will choose our simple sentence. All right. All right. So that is the end of our lesson on simple, compound, complex, and compound complex sentences. Right. With our simple sentences, it is basically it has an independent clause. Then we have a compound sentence which has two independent clauses, which is joined by a coordinating conjunction. A complex sentence is it has both a independent clause as well as a dependent clause, and the dependent clause it begins with a subordinating conjunction. All right. But thank you very much, grade 8, for joining the class, and I really hope you're going to have a good evening further. Goodbye.